On the far edge of a forgotten Maine peninsula, in a weather-beaten caretaker's cottage beneath a decommissioned lighthouse, Ethan Cole had finally run out of places to run. He'd come to Breakwater Point for one reason: silence. No more missions, no more orders. Just the sound of the Atlantic crashing against black rock and the soft padding of Rex's paws on old wooden floors. Rex was the only part of the war Ethan had chosen to keep. The German shepherd was grizzled and scarred, one ear nicked, a faint lightning-shaped line across his muzzle where shrapnel had kissed bone. His amber eyes were steady, intelligent, and always watching Ethan, like he knew when the nightmares were coming before Ethan did. That night, the storm rolled in off the ocean like something alive. Wind howled around the lighthouse tower, rattling its dead glass. Freezing rain slashed sideways, turning the world into a blur of gray and white. The local radio station had already gone off the air hours ago, knocked out by downed lines along the coast. Ethan checked the generator, stacked extra wood by the stove, bolted the shutters, and tried to convince himself that this time he really was alone. He'd just settled onto the worn couch, Rex curled on the rug at his feet when the dog's head lifted. No growl, no bark, just a sudden electric tension running through his body. Rex stared at the front door, ears pricked, nose tasting air that smelled like salt, rusted metal, and something else. Something wrong. "Easy, buddy," Ethan murmured, though his own heartbeat had already started to climb. The part of him that had once answered to Chief Petty Officer Cole snapped awake, slotting into place like it had never left. Rex rose, walked to the door, and gave a single, low whine. Then they both heard it, a faint, muffled sound under the scream of the wind, not the creak of old wood, not the crash of waves, a horn, short, stuttering, then cutting off mid-blast. The kind of desperate staccato signal you hit when you don't care who hears you, as long as someone does. Ethan grabbed his heavy coat, slung his rifle over one shoulder, and clipped Rex's harness with practiced motion. "You stay tight," he said. Rex's tail gave one small thump. Ready. Outside, the storm punched into them like a wall, rain driven almost horizontal, icy needles on exposed skin. The beam from Ethan's powerful flashlight cut a narrow tunnel through the chaos. Breakwater Point's single-rutted road wound down toward a small, private marina, just a handful of creaking docks and 3 old fishing boats chained against the surging tide. Ethan moved fast, boots finding the path by memory more than by sight. Halfway down the hill, the beam of his light caught twisted metal. A white SUV had smashed through the crude wooden guardrail and nosedived into the marshy ditch beside the road. Front end crumpled, hazard lights blinking weakly through sheets of rain. The horn let out another strangled wheeze, then died. Ethan's world narrowed. Distance, footing, cover. All of it mapped in a heartbeat. He slid down the embankment, Rex at his side. The windshield was a spiderweb of shattered glass. The driver's side door hung open, rocking slightly. "Hello?" Ethan shouted over the storm. "Call out if you can hear me." No answer. He swung his light inside. A woman lay half across the center console, wrists bound in front of her with zip ties. Duct tape ripped halfway off her mouth. Dark hair stuck to her blood-smeared temple. Her left leg was twisted at an ugly angle beneath the crushed dashboard. Her eyes were half open, glazed with pain and cold. Behind her, in the back seat, an orange emergency medical bag lay torn open. Gauze and IV lines spilled like entrails across the floor. EMT, Ethan noted automatically. Or paramedic. Her gaze, unfocused, slid toward the beam of his flashlight, then past it, to Rex. For a heartbeat, something like relief flickered there. "Rex, down!" Ethan ordered, his voice flat, calm. The dog sank to his belly in the mud, muscles coiled but still. Ethan holstered the rifle, tore off one glove, and checked the woman's carotid. Faint, thready pulse, breathing shallow, hypothermia and shock wrestling for first place. "Hey," he said, leaning close. "Stay with me. I'm going to get you out of here." Her lips moved under the ragged tape. A whisper fought its way out. "D-Doc!" He followed her gaze. Pinned to the crumpled passenger side visor was a plastic motel keycard with a note stapled to it. The ink had run in the damp, but the words were still legible. "Last warning, stay out of other people's business, Cole. A cold weight slid into Ethan's gut. They knew his name. They knew where he lived. This wasn't random. He ripped the rest of the tape from the woman's mouth. She flinched, hissed in pain, then sagged back, eyes rolling. Rex whined softly. "We got her," Ethan said to the dog, as much as to himself. "Move." He cut through the zip ties with his knife, freed her hands, then wedged his shoulder beneath her and dragged her out of the SUV, careful of her ruined leg. She cried out once, then went limp, her head knocking against his chest. The walk back up the hill felt twice as long, with her weight in his arms and the storm clawing at every step. But Ethan had carried men through worse and worse places. Rex ranged ahead, circling back, checking the darkness with every sense. No headlights on the road, no engine. Whoever had put her here was gone for now. Inside the cottage, Ethan moved on instinct. Stove cranked high, wet clothes cut away, blankets warmed, neck brace rigged from folded towels and tape, splint for her leg, warm saline from his own field kit flushing the small cuts, cleaning the worst of the blood from her face. Rex lay near the door, eyes never leaving the stranger on Ethan's couch. The woman shivered violently for 10 minutes, straight, teeth chattering, lips bluish white. Then, slowly, under the combined assault of heat and care, her muscles unclenched. Color crept back to her cheeks. Her eyelids fluttered. Ethan backed up a step, hands open, non-threatening. "Easy," he said. "You're safe. Name?" She blinked at the ceiling, at the stove, at the red and white buoy hanging from a nail on the wall, then at the man standing by the foot of the couch, at the scar carved along his jaw, at the big dog lying like a sentry in front of the door. "Lauren," she whispered, voice raw. "Lauren Price." "Ethan Cole," he said. Her eyes flicked to the dog. "Rex," he added. "We pulled you out of your car. You remember what happened?" Pain and memory washed over her face all at once. She breathed in sharply, tried to sit, and nearly passed out again. "Don't," Ethan said, stepping forward but not touching her. "Your leg's broken, head's probably concussed. You try to stand, you'll eat my floor." She shut her eyes, breathed through the pain, then opened them again, clearer now, smarter, assessing. "The note," she croaked. "Did you—" He held up the motel key card and the stapled scrap of paper. "I saw it." Something like despair flashed behind her eyes. "Then you're in it now," she whispered, just like they wanted. Before Ethan could press, knuckles hammered on his door. 3 sharp raps, not frantic, not polite. Rex was on his feet instantly, hackles raised, a low growl building in his throat. "Quiet," Ethan murmured, moving to the wall beside the door, staying out of the line of fire, fingers closing around the grip of his handgun. "Who is it?" he called, voice flat. "It's Nora Bennett," a woman's voice shouted back over the wind. "Sheriff's Department. My truck's in the ditch 3 bends up. Open up, Cole, before I freeze to death out here." Ethan glanced at Rex. The dog's growl dialed back half a notch. Not gone, but less. He flipped the deadbolt, cracked the door. Framed in the storm was a woman in her early 30s, soaked through, blonde hair plastered to her temples under a navy beanie. She wore a dark patrol jacket with the Knox County star on the chest, one hand up against the wind, the other resting lightly on the holster at her hip. Her eyes were bright and wary, and they slid past Ethan's shoulder and widened when she saw the couch. "Good Lord," she breathed, stepping inside without waiting for an invite. "We got a 911 call that cut out. Same number as the one Lauren uses for tips. Dispatch pinged it out this way, then nothing. I came to check, but the road's a skating rink." Her gaze snagged on the makeshift splint, the bruises, the blood. "What happened?" "Someone tried to make sure she never placed another call," Ethan said. Lauren's fingers twitched against the blanket. "They ran me off the road," she rasped. "Blind curve, big pickup, no plates. They were waiting for me." Nora dropped her hat on the table, moved to the couch, and knelt, her cop's eyes scanning injuries with a practiced detachment. "Lauren," she said gently, "it's me. You're okay." Lauren's 1,000-yard stare softened a fraction. "Nora," she murmured, They know?" Nora's jaw tightened. "Know what?" Lauren swallowed, eyes flicking between the deputy and the ex-SEAL and the dog standing guard. "There's a company in town," she said. "HarborLight Outreach. On paper, it's a nonprofit that runs rehab boats for veterans. Fishing trips, counseling on the water. Half the town donates to them. But the numbers never added up. Too much money in, not enough going out. I started digging. Ethan said nothing. Somewhere deep in his chest, something cold slid into place. HarborLight had been the reason his own VA caseworker had suggested Breakwater Point. And, Nora pressed, Lauren's gaze burned now, feverish but unwavering. They're using the rehab boats as cover, she hissed. Hiding stolen pharmaceuticals, forged prescriptions, black market painkillers, shipping them up and down the coast. People who trust them, who think they're getting help, are being used as couriers. Nora went very still. Ethan watched the deputy's face carefully. Who's they? He asked quietly. Lauren's lips trembled. I don't know everyone, she admitted, but I know this. I traced the paperwork. Shell corporations, fake donors, all of it leads back to one name as director and primary trustee. Her voice cracked, not from pain now, but from betrayal. Pastor Elias Ward. Ethan recognized the name, the man who ran Sunday services out of a converted fish warehouse in town. The same man who dropped by Ethan's cottage once with a basket of muffins and a Bible, smiling like he could see straight into Ethan's soul and wasn't afraid of what he found there. He's the one who recommended HarborLight to the VA, Ethan said slowly. Yeah, Lauren whispered. He handpicks his flock, vets, recovering addicts, single moms who can't afford meds. Then he decides who gets help and who gets turned into a mule. Silence fell, thick and tight. Rex shifted closer to the couch, laying his head carefully near Lauren's hand. She let her fingers sink into his fur, anchoring herself as the room tilted. There's more, she said. I had proof. Bank transfers, fake invoices, photos of boats unloading at night. I was on my way to meet a contact who'd promised me the final piece, a ledger that would tie Ward directly to every illegal shipment. And, Nora asked. Lauren's eyes shuddered. I never got there, she said. Someone called me from a blocked number, told me to take the back road to the marina because the main drag was blocked by a fallen line. I bought it. Halfway down, the pickup was waiting. They hit me hard. Truck. Never stopped. When I woke up, her voice faltered. There were two men, ski masks, gloves. One of them stuffed that motel keycard in my pocket. Called me curious little reporter. Said guys like Ward don't like their finances examined. Said I should have left the Quiet X SEAL alone. Her eyes locked on Ethan's. They knew I'd talk to you. He shook his head once. I just told you HarborLight felt off, he said. How I didn't like signing forms I couldn't read without my hands shaking. Doesn't matter, Lauren breathed. They've got someone listening. At the station, at the newspaper, maybe both. Nora swore under her breath, low and vicious. So we bring this straight to the state police, she said. To the AG. We don't go anywhere near Ward or his board. Can you call anyone from your car? Ethan asked. Nora's mouth twisted. Radio went dead when I hit that ice patch, she said. Cell reception's a joke out here. We're on our own until morning. Ethan's mind moved 3 steps ahead. If they'd left a note in Lauren's car with his name on it, this wasn't just about a nosy reporter. They'd folded him into their narrative. Maybe as leverage, maybe as a loose end from some distant background check. Guys like Ward might love public platforms, but they hated variables. Rex suddenly lifted his head, nose flaring, body taut. He walked to the window, clawed at the curtain. Ethan crossed the room in 3 strides, eased the fabric aside a sliver, and peered out into the storm. Headlights, 2 sets, crawling slowly along the road from town, cutting through the sleet. Someone's coming, he said. Nora moved to the other side of the window, grabbed the binoculars hanging from a nail, and focused. Pickup truck, she said. Dark, no decals, no light bar, second vehicle behind it, van, no markings on that either. She lowered the binoculars, jaw clenched. They're not neighbors bringing soup. The storm, the crashed car, the cut radio. It wasn't just bad luck. It was isolation, deliberate engineered isolation. Ethan slid the deadbolt into place, crossed to a corner chest, and flipped it open. Inside were tidy rows of supplies he'd told himself he didn't need anymore. Extra magazines, a med kit, flares, a coil of paracord, a compact night vision monocular, still smelling faintly of sand and oil. He tossed the monocular to Nora. You shoot? He asked. She caught it, lips tightening. Department says I'm the best shot in 3 counties, she said. but I've never shot from a fisherman's porch in a hurricane. First time for everything, Ethan said. Lauren swallowed, watching them. You should have left me in the ditch, she whispered. Ethan looked at her, really looked, at the fear, the guilt, the weight of knowing other people were in danger because she'd tugged too hard on the thread. Not my style, he said. Nora moved to the back door, checked the latch, then looked down as Rex pressed his nose against the bottom edge of the frame, sniffing. He sneezed, shook his head, and backed away, ears flat. Gasoline. Ethan smelled it a second later, a faint, oily tang sneaking in under the door, wrong and out of place in the salt, wet air. They're going to try to burn us out, he said. He grabbed the fire extinguisher, shoved a towel along the threshold, and killed the lamps in one smooth motion. The cottage fell into darkness, broken only by the dull orange glow of coals in the stove. Outside, the truck engines idled down, doors slammed, voices, male, confident, not shouting, laughing. Rex slipped forward like a shadow, positioning himself between Lauren and the door. You two stay low, Ethan said quietly. If they think we're still in the dark, they'll get closer. Nora, front window, left side. If anyone lights up a bottle, you take him first. No warning shots. She nodded, settled into position. Lauren's fingers dug into the blanket. What about you? She whispered. Ethan slid along the wall toward the back, where the narrow kitchen window looked out over the cliff. I've got a different angle, he said. He cracked the window just enough to feel the storm stab his wrist, then slipped out into the night, closing it behind him. The wind tore at him, trying to pry him off the slick rock. He kept low, moving along the side of the cottage until he could see the front yard through the veil of rain. 3 men, all in dark jackets and watch caps. 2 held shotguns. The third carried something in his left hand that glinted when the lightning strobed. A lighter. In his other fist, the neck of a glass bottle stopped with a rag. Molotov cocktail. Closer to the road, the second vehicle, an old white delivery van, waited with its engine running. Ethan scanned, found no badge gleam, no reflective tape. These men didn't want anyone mistaking them for law enforcement. One of the shotgun carriers called out, Cole, you home, brother? His voice was cheery, mocking. Pastor Ward's worried about you, says you've been dodging his calls. That's not very neighborly. The man with the bottle chuckled, lifted it. Maybe he just needs a little warmth in his life, he said. He flicked the lighter. The moment the flame bloomed, Nora fired. The window flashed, a thunderclap rolled across the yard, and the bottle exploded in the man's hand. Fire splashed harmlessly into the mud as he screamed, clutching his shredded fingers. Rex barked once, sharp and booming, as chaos erupted. The second intruder dove behind Ethan's old truck, spraying wild cover fire at the now shattered window. The third swung his shotgun toward the cottage door, firing twice, splinters flying from the heavy wood. Ethan took his breath, let it out slow, and squeezed his trigger. His first shot blew the rear tire of the van. The vehicle lurched, metal, shrieking as the rim bit into rock. Back! Back! Someone yelled. The uninjured gunman scrambled toward the van, using the truck as cover. Rex, watching through the broken glass, saw his legs under the chassis. He moved without a sound. Ethan saw a flash of black and tan streak across the window, then reappear at ground level on the other side of the porch. Rex exploded into the yard, using the truck for cover, just like Ethan would have, sprinting low and fast. The gunman never saw him coming. Rex hit him behind the knee, teeth closing on heavy fabric, ignoring the wild swipe of the shotgun barrel. The man crashed into the mud, weapons skittering away. Rex didn't go for the throat. Ethan had never trained him for sport. He went for control, jaw clamping down on the man's forearm the second his hand groped for a sidearm, twisting until bone popped and the gun dropped. The wounded arsonist stumbled toward the van, clutching his bleeding hand. The driver slammed the gear into reverse, tires spinning uselessly. Go! 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 Someone screamed. Ethan put 2 rounds into the radiator. Steam billowed. The van coughed, choked, and died. The men made a choice. They ran. Not toward the cottage, away, into the wind and the rain and the dark, crashing down the narrow path that snaked along the cliffs toward HarborLight's private dock, back toward whoever they thought could still save them. Ethan dashed forward, calling Rex off with a sharp whistle. The The dog released the crying, cursing man and bounded back to Ethan's side, coat slick with rain and mud, eyes bright. "Good boy," Ethan breathed, hand pressing briefly to Rex's neck. "Real good boy." Nora met them at the door, face pale but steady, service pistol still in her hand. "You all right?" Ethan asked. "Windows history," she said. "My pride's intact. Lauren?" From inside, a strained voice called out. "Still here? Still wishing I'd picked a safer career, like shark wrestling." Ethan allowed himself a ghost of a smile. Then it was gone. "They're going to the dock," he said. "Bet my last paycheck on it. If HarborLight's boats are how they move their stuff, Ward won't let 3 screw-ups show up here without checking on them." Nora glanced at Lauren. "You said you had a contact," she said. "Someone with the ledger." Lauren nodded, licking cracked lips. "He works maintenance at HarborLight's boathouse," she said. "Lives in a trailer near the pier. Said he was done watching patients get turned into pack mules. Tonight was our meet. If Ward's guys intercepted me—" Her voice thinned. "He might already be dead." Ethan's jaw set. "Or hiding," he said. "Either way, we can't sit here and wait for them to regroup. This cottage is a tinderbox with one way in and one way out. If they come back with more men and ARs instead of shotguns, we're done." "What do you suggest?" Nora asked. Ethan looked down at Rex, who was already sniffing the air toward the back door, tail rigid. "We stop playing defense," Ethan said. "We make them come off their script." The storm didn't break, but it shifted, the worst of the wind veering inland, leaving the coastline under a thick, icy curtain of rain. Ethan's cottage became a command post. Nora spread a laminated nautical chart on the table, tracing the jagged outline of Breakwater Point with a calloused finger. Lauren lay propped on pillows, sweating and pale but stubbornly awake, guiding them through the layout of HarborLight's compound, a repurposed cannery building, a gravel lot, 2 rehab boats at permanent mooring, 1 larger trawler they only took out at night. "That's the one they load heavy," she said, tapping the drawing with a shaking hand. "The St. Bridget. Ward likes to say she carries burdens the world can't see." "Cute," Nora muttered. "They use the little booths in the chapel for their intake interviews," Lauren continued. "Make people confess everything that's broken in them, then decide if they're good candidates for the program. Nobody questions the comings and goings. People bring casseroles." Nora's mouth twisted. "Elias married half this town," she said. "Buried the other half. If we accuse him with nothing but stories and gut feelings, we'll be the ones run out on a rail." "We're not going with stories," Ethan said quietly. "We're going with proof." "Assuming the ledger still exists," Lauren said. "Assuming my source is alive. Assuming Ward didn't move everything the moment my car left town." Rex walked over to her, rested his chin on the edge of the couch. She scratched between his ears with a faint smile. Okay, she whispered to the dog. "You're right. That's a lot of assuming." Ethan dug into his chest again and pulled out a battered sat phone. "I kept one souvenir," he said, flipping it open. "I've got a contact at NCIS who owes me favors and doesn't give a damn about small-town politics. If we can get him something solid, numbers, names, shipment schedules, he'll move heaven and earth to drop a federal hammer on HarborLight." "Can he get here?" Nora asked. "Not before morning," Ethan said. "And Ward won't sit on his hands that long. Those guys were scouts. He'll send more. Or worse, he'll cut and run. Take his records, his money, his boats, and disappear. Leave this town holding the wreckage." Nora looked at the chart again. "The only way out of this cove by water is the channel between Gull Rock and Devil's Tooth," she said. "You try to sneak a trawler out in this weather, you either know the path by heart, or you die on the reef." "Ward's been a lobster man since he could walk," Ethan said. "He knows every rock out there. If he decides to run, he'll make it. Not if we make that." "Channel looked like a trap," Lauren whispered. "If he thinks the Coast Guard's waiting there, he'll panic. Use the smaller boats instead. Take the fastest one for himself. Burn the rest." "And burning boats means burning evidence," Nora said. "We need that ledger before he gets spooked." Rex shifted, ears perking, like he understood the word evidence. He walked to the corner where Ethan's damp coat hung and nosed at the pocket. "What is it, bud?" Ethan murmured. Rex pawed at the pocket, whined, then trotted to the door, looked back, and whined again, impatient, insistent. "Follow him," Lauren said suddenly. "He found something once before, didn't he? That's what those men meant. They told me to stop poking around the lighthouse dog." Ethan frowned, then reached into his coat and pulled out the motel keycard again. He turned it over in his hand. On the back, in small print, was the name and address of a roadside inn 2 towns inland. Nothing special. Rex sniffed it, then sneezed, shook his head, and walked to the stove. There, he scratched at the floorboards where the edge of an old rug curled up. Ethan's heart gave a strange little jump. "Move the table," he said. Nora helped him shove it aside. Rex dug at the seam again until Ethan's fingers found a hairline gap in the wood. An old hatch. He pried it up. The smell hit him first. Not rot, not damp. Paper, ink, plastic. And underneath it all, the faint chemical tang of laminate and toner. Lauren's breath caught. "You have got to be kidding me," she whispered. In the hidden compartment, wrapped in a trash bag, was a slim black binder and a plain gray flash drive in a sandwich bag. Ethan lifted them out slowly, staring. "Somebody used this cottage," he said, the same way Lauren's source used his trailer, as a dead drop. Nora rubbed a hand over her face. "And Pastor Ward just happened to recommend you, combat-trained, paranoid, hyper-vigilant, to live in the house sitting on his secrets." "Maybe he thought a broken soldier wouldn't look down," Ethan said. "Just stare at the horizon and try not to think." Rex sat, tail thumping once. Ethan plugged the drive into his old laptop, the one with no Wi-Fi card, no Bluetooth, nothing that could accidentally talk to the outside world without his say-so. Folders bloomed on the screen, shipment logs, names, dates, prescription codes that turned into street names once Lauren began to translate them, offshore accounts, donations to HarborLight, donations from HarborLight, money bouncing between shell companies and construction fronts, and in the middle of it all, one spreadsheet labeled simply, Ledger. Nora stared as numbers scrolled past. "Dear God," she breathed. He could have built 3 hospitals with this money, or just not drained half the town dry in fundraisers while telling everyone he lived on a pastor's salary. Lauren pointed at a column. "That's your sheriff's brother," she said quietly. "Right there. The trucking company that does free charity deliveries. He's been hauling meds and cash for HarborLight for years." Nora's jaw clenched hard enough to creak. "My boss isn't stupid," she said. "He might have turned a blind eye, but if his own brother's getting rich off fake food drives, he'll burn the world down before he lets Ward drag the family name into federal court." "Which makes him dangerous," Ethan said, "but not untouchable. He copied everything to an encrypted file, fingers moving with automatic precision. Once my contact gets this," he said, "he can bypass everyone local, but we still have a problem. Ward doesn't know we've got his ledger yet. He just knows Lauren's alive, and I'm in his way. That means he still thinks he has the upper hand. Then we tip the balance," Lauren said, eyes blazing. "We call him." Nora stared at her. "We what?" "We call him," Lauren repeated. "Not directly, through someone Ward thinks he controls." Her gaze slid to the list of phone numbers linked to burner accounts in Ward's ledger. "There," she said, pointing. "That's the number my source used. Ward made him keep 2 phones, one for work, one for special assignments. If I text that line from your sat phone, Ward will think his guy's sending an update. We tell him the ledger's still at the dock, but the state police got a tip and are moving in on HarborLight. We tell him he has one shot to move everything tonight." "You want to bait him into loading all his dirty laundry onto one boat?" Nora said slowly. "And then—" "What? We watch him sail off?" Ethan's eyes had gone distant and sharp. "No," he said. "We pick the boat he trusts most. We make sure he puts his product and his loyal muscle there, and then we meet him before he clears the harbor." "In what?" Nora demanded. "My cruiser, your 14-foot skiff. Ethan, we're outgunned, outnumbered, and I am not taking Lauren on an ocean chase with a broken leg." "You're not," Ethan said. "You're staying here, both of you, with Rex. If this goes sideways, somebody has to live to hand that ledger to the feds." Rex's ears flattened. He whined, nudged Ethan's hand. "I know, buddy," Ethan murmured. "I didn't say you'd like it." Lauren's hand tightened on the edge of the couch. "You think Ward's just going to walk onto a boat with a ledger tucked under his arm?" "No," Ethan said. "But I think he's arrogant enough to think he can juggle 3 crises at once. If he believes the state police are about to ram his front door, he'll split his assets, send some on the trawler with his outreach staff, leave some in his office to make it look like a misunderstanding, and take the irreplaceable stuff, backup records, blackmail files, on a smaller, faster boat with himself and one or two men he trusts most. Nora drummed her fingers on the tabletop. There's a 24-foot lobster boat moored behind the cannery, she said slowly. Belongs to HarborLight on paper, but Ward's the only one I've ever seen drive her. Black hole, quiet motor, name's Mercy Tide. Ethan's mouth curved in a humorless ghost of a smile. Mercy Tide, he repeated. Of course it is. The docks of HarborLight Outreach were a smear of light and shadow in the storm. The main cannery building glowed warm through its frosted windows. Laughter leaked from the chapel room, where Ward's volunteers were finishing a late-night prayer circle, oblivious to the trucks idling on the far side of the lot. From his crouch behind a rotting stack of lobster traps, Ethan watched the vehicles, the doors, the dark bobbing shapes of hulls rocking against their moorings. He had the sat phone pressed to one ear, rain dripping from his hood. "File received," a crisp voice said. "Jesus, Cole, when you come out of retirement, you don't mess around." "Save the reunion for later," Ethan murmured. "You get me a Coast Guard cutter or state patrol boat to sit on the mouth of this harbor in the next 40 minutes. I can get you a cutter on a routine inspection patrol off your coast by dawn," the voice said. "Sooner if I burn favors, but not in 40 minutes. Why? What's Ward doing?" "Leaving," Ethan said. "Tonight, before the storm lifts. He thinks a trooper got wind of his scam." "You make him think that?" the voice asked dryly. "Lauren did," Ethan said. "I'm just borrowing his paranoia." The federal agent swore softly. "All right," he said. "Then listen carefully. You keep Ward in that harbor as long as you can. Make him circle. Make him stall. If he gets past the marker buoys, you let me know. I'll redirect every floating asset I've got." The line clicked dead. Ethan slid the phone into his pocket and scoped the pier again through Nora's borrowed binoculars. There. The Mercy Tide's deck light sprang to life, a harsh white circle on slick wood. Pastor Elias Ward stepped out of the cannery's side door like he was heading to a sunrise service, not a crime scene. No collar tonight. Just a dark navy raincoat over a fisherman's sweater, cap pulled low, Bible study warmth gone from his eyes. Two men followed. One, Ethan recognized as the mangled gunman from earlier, now with his hand heavily bandaged. The other was taller, broader, carrying a duffel that sagged like it was full of stacked bricks. Money, Ethan guessed, or pills, or both. Ward moved with the smooth assurance of a man who'd spent his life walking docks in bad weather. He stepped onto the Mercy Tide, took the wheel, and barked quiet orders. His men cast off lines. The smaller boat began to drift away from its berth. Time. Ethan slid back into the shadows, moving along. The slick planks to the far end of the dock, where an old rowboat bumped against the pilings. He untied it, lowered himself in, and pushed off with a silent oar stroke. He'd learned to board moving vessels off the coast of countries where they shot at you for less. Tonight, he was counting on the storm and Ward's focus on the harbor entrance to hide his approach. Rex, Nora, and Lauren were 3 miles away in a darkened cottage, watching the harbor through binoculars and holding on to the sat phone like a lifeline. "Come back," Lauren had whispered as Ethan slipped out. Rex had pressed his head into Ethan's thigh, refusing to move until Ethan sank his fingers into the dog's fur for one long moment. "Watch them," Ethan had said. "That's an order." The Mercy Tide turned its bow toward the black mouth of the harbor's channel. Ethan angled his rowboat to intercept, keeping it low in the water, a dark smear on darker waves. Rain stung his face. The wind tried to shove him back. He pulled harder. When the lobster boat slid past him, no more than 20 feet away, he saw Ward's profile through the glass. Calm, focused, lips moving in what might have been a prayer. Ethan took 3 quick strokes, grabbed the trailing rope off the Mercy Tide's stern, and let his rowboat slam against its wake. His shoulder nearly jerked out of the socket. He hung on. Hand over hand, boots skimming waves, he pulled himself toward the ladder, fixed to the stern. No one came out with a flashlight. Ward's men were at the bow, squinting into the darkness, pointing at where they knew the reef lay hidden. Ethan hooked one arm over the rail and rolled onto the deck, landing in a crouch that turned into a slide as the boat lurched over a wave. He moved toward the cabin. Inside, Ward stood at the wheel, eyes on the invisible line of safe water between jagged rocks. The bandaged gunman stood beside him, shotgun resting against his leg. The man with the duffel sat on the bench, one arm draped protectively around the bag, eyes half closed. They never heard the door open over the storm. They felt the cold draft in the muzzle of Ethan's pistol at the same time. "Hands where I can see them," Ethan said. Ward's shoulders stiffened. He didn't turn. "Whatever you think you're doing, Mr. Cole," he said mildly, "this is a very bad place to try it." "What I'm doing," Ethan said, "is making sure you don't sink 3 years of evidence under 30 feet of salt water." Ward laughed softly. "Evidence?" he said. "You mean the theatrical ledger my enemies are so fixated on? Paper can burn, hard drives can vanish, men can change their stories. But souls, Mr. Cole, souls are dependable. Souls always come back to the man who knows how to handle their guilt." "Turn the boat around," Ethan said. "Now." The gunman shifted. Ethan didn't hesitate. He stepped back and fired once into the ceiling, showering sparks and fiberboard. The blast was deafening in the small cabin. "You fire that shotgun in here," he shouted over the ringing in his ears. "You blow your own helmsman's head off." Ward's calm cracked. He turned slowly, hands lifting away from the wheel. His eyes were not the soft, earnest pools Ethan remembered from the muffin visit. They were hard, flat, evaluating. "You didn't come alone," Ward said. "Cowards never do." "I came with the law," Ethan said, "and the law is watching right now. You try to run this channel, a Coast Guard cutter will be waiting past the marker." It was a lie for the moment, but lies, Ward knew, wielded properly, had power. Ward searched his face for a flicker. Found none. Behind him, the Mercy Tide shuddered as its hull passed over a submerged ridge. The gunman swore, grabbing for balance. "Pastor," he snarled, "we don't have time for this. Put a bullet in him and move." He didn't finish. Something slammed against the side of the cabin with a hollow boom. All 3 men flinched. Ethan didn't. He knew that sound. Another hull, closer. The cabin door flew open. "So you were right about one thing, Cole," a familiar voice shouted. "The law's here. We're just a little wetter than I prefer." Nora Bennett stood in the doorway, drenched, fury in her eyes. Service pistol pointed straight at Ward. Beside her, leaning heavily on a crutch, one leg encased in a makeshift brace, was Lauren Price. Her face was white with pain and determination. Rex stood between them, teeth bared, claws gripping the slick deck. Ethan's stare snapped to Nora. "I told you to stay put," he snarled. "We tried," she shouted back. Then Rex whined at the door until Lauren called your agent again. He said, and I quote, "If Cole's out there alone, he's doing something suicidal. Go ruin his plan." Another hull, the borrowed 30-year-old lobster boat with a half-faded Bennett & Sons sign on the side, bumped gently against the Mercy Tide, lines already thrown and tied. Ward's mask finally slipped. "Deputy Bennett," he said softly, "you bring quite a flotilla for a little misunderstanding." "This isn't a misunderstanding," Nora snapped. "We have your ledger, your shipments, your shell companies, your false donors. Full backup's on its way. That dog found what you tried to bury." Ward's eyes flicked to Rex. Rage, pure, searing, flashed there. "You meddling animal," he hissed. He moved, not for a gun, for the throttle. The Mercy Tide's engine roared as Ward shoved it forward, turning the boat hard toward the reef. Ethan lunged for the wheel. The gunman went for his shotgun. The man with the duffel went for the floor, clutching his bag. And Rex moved like lightning. The Shepherd launched past Ethan's knees, straight at Ward. He didn't go for the preacher's throat. He went for the arm hauling the throttle forward. His teeth sank into Ward's forearm. The pastor screamed, hand jerking away. The lever slammed back to idle. The boat lurched, spray exploding over the bow. The world tilted. Ethan slammed into the console. Nora lost her footing, one hand grabbing the doorframe. Lauren fell to one knee, biting back a cry. The shotgun wobbled. Ethan took his shot. The bullet drilled the wall an inch from the gunman's head. Plaster dust exploded. "Drop it," Ethan roared. Rex shook once, hard, and released Ward's arm, then sprang back, planting himself between Lauren and the men like a living shield. Outside, through the rain-smeared glass, blue strobes suddenly flickered on the horizon. Not 1, 3, Coast Guard, State Marine Patrol, a county rescue boat commandeered by a very angry sheriff who'd finally read the ledger his deputy had texted him 15 minutes earlier. Ward saw the lights, saw his options collapse. He sagged back against the wheel, blood dripping from his arm, righteous fury collapsing into something smaller and uglier. "Do you have any idea how many people I saved?" he whispered. "How many addicts I kept from overdosing by controlling what they got and when? How many families I held together by making sure the bills got paid?" "You didn't save them," Lauren said through gritted teeth. "You caged them. You told them they were broken and only you could fix them, for a price. You stole their pain and sold it wholesale." She stepped forward, bracing herself on her crutch, eyes never leaving his. "You use people's faith as cover," she said. "But you forgot something." Ward laughed hoarsely. "And what's that, Miss Price?" She glanced at Rex, then at Ethan, then back to Ward. "Real shepherds fight the wolves," she said. "They don't feed them." Weeks later, the storm was a story people told in diner booths and on church steps, each retelling smoothing some edges and sharpening others. Pastor Elias Ward was no longer leading services at the fish warehouse. He was sitting in a federal holding facility, his ledger entered into evidence, his offshore accounts frozen, his loyal board members tripping over themselves to cut deals. HarborLight's sign had been stripped off the cannery building. A hand-painted banner now hung there instead. Knox County Veterans and Family Resource Center. Under new management. In the corner, in smaller letters, someone had added, "and under new guard dog." Rex's picture, tongue lolling, metal shining on his collar, had already started making the rounds on local news. Lauren stood under the banner on opening day, leaning on a much sturdier brace now, microphone trembling just a little in her hand, as she looked out at the crowd. Townsfolk, reporters, suits from the Capitol, vets in caps, moms with strollers, kids chasing each other around folding chairs. Nora stood off to the side in her dress blues, a new commendation on her chest. Her sheriff, face lined but steady, sat beside her, his brother's empty chair left unoccupied on purpose. And Ethan? Ethan stood at the back, hands in his pockets, trying to look like he wasn't sure how he'd ended up there. Rex sat at his heel, watching everything. Lauren's voice carried over the waves. "Breakwater Point used to be a place people came to hide," she said, "to drink, to disappear, to lose themselves. We let a man tell us that he was saving us while he was selling us. And when someone tried to expose that, they tried to bury her in a ditch and burn a cottage to the ground." She smiled faintly. They forgot that sometimes the quiet places have teeth. A ripple of laughter moved through the crowd. Lauren's gaze found Ethan in the back. "And sometimes," she said softly, "God puts exactly the right people, and the right dog, on the edge of the map when we need them most." Rex tilted his head like he understood perfectly. After the speeches, after the ribbon cut and the cameras folded, after the first group of vets wandered through the cannery's newly painted hallways without being asked for their insurance information or their willingness to serve, Ethan walked down to the end of the pier. The sea was calmer now, gray, not furious. The lighthouse behind him had a fresh coat of paint. Footsteps approached. Lauren eased up beside him, moving carefully but more surely than she had in weeks. "Agent said Ward's trying to plea out," she said, "throwing everybody he's ever taken a donation from under the bus." Ethan snorted. "Sounds like him." "They're using your sat phone recording in court," she added. "The one where he threatened to let the sea cleanse the ledger. You ever think you'd hear your own voice played in a federal courtroom?" "Did my lawyer at least bleep the swearing?" Ethan asked. She laughed, then winced, hand going to her ribs. "Mostly," she said. Rex left his post at Ethan's side to nose at Lauren's pocket. She pulled out a biscuit, let him take it, and scratched his neck. "He ever get tired of being called a hero?" she asked. "Doesn't seem to," Ethan said. "Then again, his idea of a reward is floor space and whatever falls off my plate." Lauren sobered. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for everything. For not leaving me in that ditch, for believing me when it was easier not to, for letting your dog drag you into a fight you didn't ask for. Ethan looked out at the water. I came here because I was tired of fighting, he said. Thought if I could just find a quiet enough place the war in my head would finally shut up. Did it? She asked. He considered. No, he said, but I figured out something else. He glanced down at Rex, then at her. Silence isn't peace, he said. Peace is knowing the people around you can sleep without wondering who's coming for them in the night. We didn't find that here. We made it. She let the words sit between them for a long moment. Then, you think you'll stick around? She asked, nodding toward the cannery. The center's going to need someone who knows how to build things that don't fall apart in the first storm. And I'm going to need someone grumpy and paranoid to fact-check my next expose. Rex's ears perked. Ethan scratched his head. You offering him a job or me? He asked. Both, she said. Different pay scales, obviously. He smiled, small but real. Yeah, he said. I think we'll stay a while. Rex leaned into his leg, tail swishing, gaze on the town that was slowly, painfully, learning how to stand without the man who had been its false shepherd. Ethan let the sound of the waves wash over him. For the first time in a long time, the crash of water against rock didn't sound like artillery. It sounded like a heartbeat, steady, unbroken. If this story of courage, truth, and a loyal dog named Rex stirred something in you, share it with someone who needs to remember that even in the darkest storms, there are still good people and good dogs standing watch. And if you believe real heroes often look like tired veterans, stubborn reporters, small-town cops, and scarred German shepherds who refuse to back down, type Amen in your heart today.